Are you looking to get on the road to your dream career? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Mentor Select Podcast with your host, Derek Phillips. Always stay up to date on social media at Mentor Select and online at mentorselect.com. Here's your host of the Mentor Select Podcast, Derek Phillips.
Welcome to episode 62 of the Mentor Select Podcast. I'm so happy that you joined us. If you have not had the opportunity, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the Mentor Select Podcast with your friends and family and anyone who you feel could benefit from high-quality virtual mentorship. So we're in the month of October, and the end of the year is approaching so fast. I had to take a look at my 2019 New Year's resolutions and see where I stand, and I can proud to say that I'm in pretty good shape so far, like I'm going to accomplish most of them. I'm curious to know how you all are doing on your New Year's resolutions, and I hope you're preparing to set new ones. But a good pro tip is to get started on those resolutions before the new year, because that substantially increases the probability that you're going to stick with those resolutions and actually accomplish those goals. And that's certainly what I want to see for each and every one of you. Also, if you haven't had the opportunity, be sure to check out my new book, Poverty Powerball. I released it back in May. It's available on Amazon. And just last month, I released the audio version. So that's available on Audible and iTunes. So support your boy and pick that book up. I really appreciate it. It shares 10 strategies how to break the poverty mindset. And even if you're not poor or growing up in poverty, a lot of people still have that poverty mindset where they believe that we live in scarcity, but in reality, we live in a world of abundance. So the book will help you really identify the abundance that is in your life all around you. Our guest mentor today is Dr. Eve Hudson. She is an educator, an author, motivational speaker, host of the First Gen Lounge podcast. Dr. Eve does it all. And man, this interview is so impactful. I'm thrilled to bring it to you. She has so much wisdom that she shares with us throughout the interview. And she's just very open and candid about just her life experiences, her values, and just her philosophy on life and serving. So let's jump into this interview so you can get the Dr. Eve Hudson experience. So today we have Dr. Eve on the Mentor Select Podcast. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I've been waiting to have you on the podcast, anxiously waiting. So certainly excited to hear all the wisdom you're going to share with us today.
Well, I appreciate you for having me, and I, thank your listeners for tuning in and continuing to be loyal fans. Thanks to each of y'all.
Definitely, I love them. So, Dr. Eve, on the Mentor Select Podcast, we like to get to know our guest mentors better. So do you mind sharing something with us that most people don't know about you?
This is one of my fun facts, of course.
All right.
When I was in high school, my sophomore year, I played JV football.
Oh.
I was the first girl for my school, and I think the first in the district as well. So I kind of made history there. I was a nose guard. And I maxed out during that time at like 250 on the bench. So
Whoa.
I thought back then I was beast mode. Yeah. But it's just really, I didn't know I had a strength. And so that's kind of something that a lot of people don't know. I ended up getting hurt in the season, how ironic, and stopped playing. But if I had kept going, I probably would have been varsity.
Wow. Hey, you probably would have made history and been the first in the NFL. Who knows?
I'm going to let them have that. I'm going to let they can have that. Somebody's going to get that though. Somebody.
Right. No, that's really cool, especially benching 250. Wow. I know most men, I struggle with 250.
Like high school. I was also avid track and field.
Okay.
And so I did like shot puts, discus, and javelin. So I had to do a lot with upper body strength. So I didn't realize I did anything special until like years later.
That's impressive. Definitely bragging rights.
Thank you. I don't know if I can still do it though.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Dr. Eve, we really encourage our listeners to follow their passions because we believe it'll ultimately lead them to their dream career. Can you tell us how you're following your passions?
Oh, yes. So I have a background in higher education.
All right.
My first love is working with college students. When I went to school, I never wanted to leave school. So I figured out how to make that possible. But I always wanted to be a speaker, a motivational speaker at that. And that wasn't something that people around me did necessarily. It was always a black and white to, for lack of better words, job. So be a teacher, be a doctor, be a lawyer. But things like creative things, like being a speaker, how do you get to that? Nobody could really tell me. But over the past 3 years of my life, I've actually come around to figuring that part out. So me living in my passions is not only being a speaker, a motivational speaker, a podcast host, and an author. It's really centered around inspiring people and empowering them, but more specifically, first generation college students and professionals. So being still very passionate about higher education, I found a way to still serve students and to work with them in entities of higher education in ways that is, extremely fulfilling. But at the same time, I've learned how to support a group of individuals that are dear to my heart, individuals similar to myself. And I'm just having a ball with it right now.
Wow. Very cool. And so, Dr. Eve, as far as becoming a motivational speaker and inspiring people, like I said, it's just not a common career field. And it's really foreign to most people to understand that there's individuals out there who get paid to speak, to inspire others. What was that journey like, making that transition into pursuing that dream?
Absolutely tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat. It has been one of those things where at first I thought, oh, this would be easy. Everybody wants a speaker. Everybody will hire a speaker. But that's not necessarily true. Being a speaker is just like any other business. You have to have a target audience. You have to have a service or a product that you're providing that people need. You have to be focused on what you're doing and be ready for a lot of no. For me in particular, it's been one of those things to where I knew I wanted to speak to college students. I knew that that was my audience. But college students, you have athletes, you have minority students, you have first gen students, you have students in leadership, Greek students, you have students all across the board. So even with that, having to learn how to niche down and focus even on a specific group of students, something that I didn't do initially. And I was just kind of speaking everywhere for everybody. And that was good because it was getting me out there, but it was also not good because people couldn't tell you who I spoke to or what I spoke about.
Okay.
They couldn't tell you that I was inspirational or motivational or empowerment or life or, what's the story? So I had to really learn how to hone in on what was important to me to talk about and to whom I really thought needed the message, but not just that, to focus on who I could help in terms of the institution type and how I could support their mission for their students. And once I gained clarity about that and started to focus more on the benefit of me speaking and stopping to look at it as something that you just do for fun, because some people just think it's fun. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Preparing your speeches and your presentations or preparing your workshops and your handouts and making sure everything's come together and, getting feedback and the travel. It's far more to it than just showing up and speaking, hey, good job. There's a lot of thought that's put into it as well. But it has been a very rewarding journey for me. And I would say it's taken some time to pick up and to kind of get the momentum. But when it's picking up and has picked up, and I know my high seasons and low seasons, it's all good. So it's just finding what to do in between time. But that's when I spend more time podcasting.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, you pointed out a lot of good things where I think anyone starting a business, period, should keep in mind. And the first is really identifying, I always say, pick your lane. And who is your target audience? 'Cause you can't speak to everyone. You can't serve everyone. You can try, but it's not going to be as effective as if you were pinpoint in on who can you best serve and who is your message going to impact the most. So that's really good advice for someone starting any type of business, but especially as a speaker. So who is your target demographic and who did you identify?
So first generation college students, typically individuals who are in programs that serve them and individuals through multicultural affairs at institutions. But I could almost look at an institution's data and tell if they have first generation students or not. And typically it's based off of income for me. And so it's just knowing who you're serving. Again, like if you are an individual who's looking to speak to student athletes, it may not make sense to try to get in with the liberal arts school that's, all about the arts, that doesn't have it has like one, athletic team. But if you're looking to speak to athletes who come from a certain background, maybe a privileged background, it would make sense to target Michigan and Ohio State versus trying to go to, backwoods Mississippi. Not to be funny, but
Yeah.
it really depends on who you're after. So that's kind of how I look at it for first gen. I look at the school. Literally, I'm in the South a lot, and the West Coast is an area that I'm starting to get to. All over the country actually, but some places are more concentrated, especially rural areas compared to cities. Although urbans do have first gens, it's just different how everybody's approaching the first gen life.
Okay. All right. So when you go into these universities to speak to students, what type of programs do you offer?
So I offer keynote, really one around empowerment and sharing the story of being first gen, overcoming the adversity, maneuvering through education and starting a business. That's pretty much that one. And then I have another where I talk about adulting and what it means to be a first generation college student, turning into an adult and making sense out of life and the challenges that come with life and how to set a blueprint to be able to do that. And I also have a program that I typically gear toward faculty staff. That's really around how do you work with students from underrepresented populations, especially the first generation college students, to help them have a more liberating and fulfilling and promising experience as students on their particular campuses.
Wow. Very comprehensive approach. Yeah.
Gotta take care of everybody. Yeah.
No, that's great because from the faculty to the students, they all need to be on the same page. So that's fantastic. So how long have you been at the speaking business?
So legitimately for 3 years, but I have been speaking for, how old am I? I want to say as far back as high school.
Okay.
So though it was never a business, I was always called on to speak. And that was the thing that got me. You ever had the question, what are people always called on you for?
Right.
What do they need you for? And for me, it was always speaking. I always found myself in the forefront of a class or a group or audience of some sort, talking about something, but typically leaving an encouraging word. And so when I got to graduate school, I tried to do a little bit more with it in terms of getting engagements, but never thought to actually monetize. And then when I realized I could make money being a speaker because again, I still was at this point, didn't know people got paid to speak.
Right.
And it was one of those, I know I want to do this. It's something I feel like I can do, but how? And nobody could ever tell me how because nobody else did it. And so finally figured out, hey, this is what you do. You have something to offer, and then this is what makes you a speaker. So, and then to figure out who needs what you got.
Cool. Good advice. And yeah, that just ties into what you said as far as just building that momentum. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's something I certainly learned the hard way. I got started about a year ago, and I'm really starting, even though I was highly active that first year, I'm really starting to get the momentum now, where things are starting to fall into place and people are really starting to understand, okay, what my brand is, who I would be a good audience to speak in front of. But yeah, for those out there who are aspiring to start a business or become a speaker, at least it's going to take some time.
Oh, yeah. And, I like that you said it's not an overnight thing because even, I'd say legitimately 3 years, but some of the engagements that I've gotten even in the past 2 and 3 years have been individuals who I met 9 and 10 years ago.
Wow.
People who remembered when I spoke for a group for free. People who remembered something that I had said or remembered me saying, one day I'm going to be a speaker. Now they're saying, hey, I see you're finally doing it. And can you help us with this? So, the thing about people like Eric Thomas or Les Brown or Lisa Nichols, and I'm like, oh, look at me, people in the industry who I may look up to. Okay, I do. But to think about, them being, further along in life than what, people like you and I are, the same story goes. They didn't just get there. They've been at this for years.
Yes.
People just start seeing them. So I try to keep the same, perspective when I'm in any situation, especially as a speaker, that while I may not be on a $100,000 scale yet, it's coming
Right.
because I'm building in, like you said earlier, branding. And that is the most important part, just to stay consistent too, so that people will recognize that you're serious about what you're doing.
Right. Definitely. So you mentioned earlier about podcasting. So do you have a podcast?
Yes, I do. It's called the First Gen Lounge. It's actually started off as an experiment. Back in January 2017, I started what was then the Purpose University podcast, being that I go by the Purpose Professor, and my business is actually the Purpose Professor Limited Liability Company. That's a lot of people don't know either. But with that, I was just wanting to talk a bit about purpose and how you find your purpose in navigating life. And I was playing around like big time. Like I would podcast and maybe put up something of a show every so often. Like maybe the first year I put up 3 shows. And I was like, I just didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with a really good friend. Actually, Larry.
Oh, yeah.
And Larry, having a conversation with him one day, and we were talking. I said, I just think, a lot of the problems I'm having come from me being first generation. And he's like, well, you've been saying this to me for years. When you going to listen to yourself? And I was like, true. Maybe I should just start interviewing people on my podcast, change it, and see what people have to say about their first gen experience, build community or something. And I was being funny about it. And once I started, never stopped. And actually got to a point where I changed the name a year ago, September 1, to the First Gen Lounge from the Purpose University podcast. And it took off. So it has become my baby. It is something that gives me a lot of joy, makes me really proud, but it's also really, really helped me to dive into the first gen community and really connect with my group. So I am really proud of what it's become, but hey, I'm not going to sit there and stunt. Well, I knew what I was doing. No, it definitely evolved. And so I'd even say from that first year, may have had like 500 downloads or so over that whole year in those 3, 4, 5 episodes. I forget how many it was, but it definitely wasn't anything to talk about. And it's now reached more than a year from last March, more than 34 countries, and has exceeded 24,000 downloads. So somebody's listening. And I was like, oh, so this is what happens when you don't play around. I wasn't, I wasn't, I have barely advertised. I may have done 1 or 2 Facebook, Facebook promotions.
Right.
So I know a lot of it has been word of mouth and somebody catching something that caught something. So if anybody's listening to this, that's a part of the First Gen fam, I thank you for that. Tell anybody, because it's the people that's helping make the show what it is. Because if I market it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what would that do? So
for the millions of downloads, get there.
Yeah, that would be insane. Right.
Wow, that is cool. And I had the honor of being on the First Gen Lounge podcast.
Yes,
a lot of fun. So
you killed your show. Yes, you are officially family.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
The family now. So I highly encourage listeners to check it out. Especially a lot of minorities are first generation college students, and it's to be part of that community and connect with other people that can relate to your journey is powerful.
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to gas you up, but since we're talking about it, and since y'all folks listening, I'm gonna tell you, your people, our people, how legit you are. That right. No kidding, your show has been my top show for September.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I checked the stats before we got on the call. Let me see how the show doing. It's doing really good. So people are definitely responding. So that's good. That what you got to say about what you've been through. I mean, both of us is definitely touching folks. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me on. So speaking about what we've been through, so to attain your doctor's degree, that's something that should have put you in like the top 1% or something. Did you always have aspirations of getting the doctorates?
Of course I did. I was a kid and they asked me what I want to be when I grew up. And I said, I want to be a doctor.
Okay.
And I started taking math and science and realized I wasn't going to be one. But I only ever knew one doctor. Of course, again, talking about being first generation, did not understand the complexity of education post high school. And I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And I was okay with that. I knew I wanted to do education because I just love learning and teaching all the same. And to kind of get where I am now, I had a professor actually one from my undergraduate years and actually another from graduate school. But one actually taught me about the many kinds of doctors that you can get, PhD, EDD, MD, JD, Psych D. And I was like, oh, those are a whole lot of D's, like so many ways to the route. But I knew then that I probably could be a doctor one day, although not in the quote traditional sense of being medical doctor, because that's what most people know when you hear doctor. But a doctor is still somebody who has an expertise in a certain skill in a field, be it through research or science or what have you. That's just their thing that they know in and out. And so heard that I would have to spend at least 10 years in school to even ever be a doctor, and decided, thing for me. I was like, who gonna do that? You gonna do it? I'm not gonna do that. But again, having a really great mentor, Dr. Kim Leathers, who was my honors college dean when I was in school, heard what she said, but then got to grad school, was working on a master's. And I had another professor, Dr. Shelley, I never forget, older white lady at that. And I was in Mississippi. And because I tell people, like, of all the places, not trying to be funny, of course, but it was a pleasant surprise to have had the support that I did have. And especially when people who think, oh, white people are this way. No, I met a lot of good people, Black, white, and otherwise, while in Mississippi. So one of my professors was like, I think you should try for a doctorate. I laughed. Me? Okay, sure. Ended up applying and got into the program, and it was a nice feeder program for my master's, but never would have imagined. And here I am, many years later. I got the doctorate, and definitely wasn't an easy journey, but I had some really amazing people to support me and encourage me over the years to even get to this place. So that's a little bit about that.
Wow. That's certainly an inspirational journey that you took. And it's cool to see so eye-opening to see how that we may not see the gifts within us because we're living in our body. We don't know how the potential we have, but mentors or other people can see that in us and help us recognize it. So can you tell us the role that mentors have played in your life, your career? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but dive a little deeper into that.
Said it. You said it all. My mentors have saved my life.
Wow.
And if it were not for my mentors, I wouldn't be who I am. And I know that. And that's not giving myself credit. That's just saying the truth, because like you said, verbatim, mentors seeing you what you don't always see in yourself. And I have been a person of low self-esteem for a long time. In spite of my outgoingness, that was to just try to find something to hide how I was really feeling, what I was really going through, just wanting to be accepted and stuff. So saying that to say my mentors saw my potential from the earliest fifth grade and would not let up on me. And they knew the situation I'd come from, being a part of a single parent household, being the oldest, again, first generation, that they needed to help me. They stood in, in the gaps. That's the best way I can think to say it. And they helped to mold me into this individual that I didn't even know would exist. Somebody who could be articulate, someone who could be truly outgoing, and because it's of a desire, not because of it's, I need to be accepted kind of thing. Definitely people who were all, and I'm not kidding when I say this, all educators. And so when we talk about education and the value of it, there's no price tag you can put on any educator, because it's not just what they're teaching you in the books, it's what they're teaching you about life and who they're helping you become. You spend most of your time with educators from the time you start school and through, until you graduate.
Right.
But mentors wrote my letters for college, my recommendations. Mentors connected me to other mentors for job. Even peer mentors helped me to find a job when I was in college. And I worked that job 3.5 years. Mentors are the individuals who, when I'm down and out and need somebody to call, I've been able to call them, not just for professional advice, but for life advice, because they've got experience in, one way or another. And to have a very diverse platform of mentors, people who are as I ain't gonna say old, but it's seasoned. As I said, it was like, I ain't trying to get cussed out, but it's I know, right? They're wise. Yes. But as wise as 70 years. And then you'll have others who are as wise as 22 years, because mentorship isn't contingent on age always. It's contingent on somebody having something that you may not have that they can teach you.
Right.
So I'm very open to how my mentors come and how they shape me. Women, men, Black, white, Latino. I like to have the diverse backgrounds because the world doesn't look like me.
Right.
And because the perceptions, the perspectives even help me to see outside of myself. But mentors, have pushed me and kept me in ways that even when I may not have been able to depend on people that I thought I could depend on, I could always depend on my mentors. They took roles for me similar to family. So mentorship is everything for me. And it's really what's made me want to be a mentor and as good of a mentor, if not better, than the ones that I've had in my life. But they pretty hard to top.
Set the bar high, huh?
Yeah, real high, real high. Like it's a whole job trying to be like them.
But no, that's great. And I'm sure you have made them proud and continue to make them proud, and especially by paying it forward and mentoring, reaching back and mentoring other people. So,
Thank you.
that's what it's all about, certainly. So you have your doctor's degree, you host a podcast, doing motivational speaking. What else have you accomplished? Have you written any books or anything like that?
I did write a book, and I'm over here like, when do you just chill? I just don't. Like, I like to be on the move. So I wrote my first book about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it's called 1865. Just that. I was trying to get my Adele on, but I named it 1865. It's about learning to navigate young adulthood, especially as a first generation college student. And what I essentially did was set my younger self in a chair and told her everything she needed to know. But it translates well for young adults, college students, graduate students, and even, professionals who just need that encouraging word and the life lessons. I just really love college students. They're my favorite group of people in the whole wide world. And so everything that I aim to do is to support them in some kind of way. And that book was really being named not because of its content, but because of its symbolism.
Okay.
1865, when you think about the Emancipation Proclamation and what happened the years to come, in 1865, Shaw University was established. And so it was not only, right before the freeing of slaves, but what happened the year after when they started to go to school because access was there for them to learn and to read and to write, to be better people. And education has been what has helped break the barriers for our people, which to me translated to how education and having gone to Shaw is something that really elevated me. It changed the trajectory of my life. It put me in a space where all things growth, where I came literally from the ground up. So if you looked at the book cover, the reason for the tree, for the growth, but then the growth isn't always pretty. That's why the tree is kind of bare. But then to have the birds on there, I love birds. For when I was writing, I was looking at trees and birds all day too. So it was just, again, that reminder, but the birds just to spread your wings and fly. And wherever you land is where you're supposed to be, even if it's 4 seasons. So, so I really, knew I was taking a chance, not giving the book a deeper name, but I knew that the people whose hands it got into, it was going to help them as necessary. And I just wanted to make a statement, 1865. And so we have conversations like this to be able to further share why it's so important that it's named that way. And I'm hoping to keep up that trend with the book name. So, hey.
Yeah, that is really cool. Certainly deep. And I remember looking on your webpage and seeing the book on your website and just thinking, such a cool cover. And now hearing the whole backstory and just what it symbolizes, got me sold. I definitely want to get a copy.
I'm glad. You got one. I got you.
So how can listeners get a copy of your book?
On my website, which is www.thepurposeprofessor.com, or on Amazon. Just type in 1865 because there ain't too many books named that, and you'll find it. But if you do happen to get it from my website, I'll be willing to offer y'all a little special code for Mentor Select. Take care of my family. Take care of my family.
Good stuff. Cool. Wow. You certainly have an impressive background and just a lot of things you've accomplished. I guess, can you tell the listeners just we can kind of hear it in your voice, but how does it feel doing something that you love? And you mentioned how much you love serving college students, and that's exactly what you're doing. So how does that feel?
You ever had a cold?
Yep.
Head cold, nose was stuffy.
Just last week.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then you woke up one morning And in spite of how crazy that cold was, how uncomfortable it was, you were just able to breathe, and you took that breath and you were like, "Whew, I feel good."
Right.
It feels like that.
Wow. Yes.
It feels like I spent years with a cold, um, stuffiness and headache and drama, not feeling well and dragging. And then one morning I woke up and I could just breathe. And that doesn't mean that, everything is perfect, but it means that I can breathe. I feel good. And I'm good with this. And I still got to do what I got to do, working really hard, staying healthy, eating right, exercising, sleeping to keep the cold away. That's putting time into my business. That's marketing. That's making collaborations. That's, doing things that make me uncomfortable, right? That's how I would translate it. But I can breathe and I want to stay in this place. That's how it feels.
Wow. Yeah, you nailed it.
I appreciate you, friend. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Certainly.
you.
Yeah, like I have allergies, and it be hard last week, and just things take for granted being able to breathe out of both nostrils.
Oh yeah, out of both. Right.
This week I can breathe again, so it definitely feels great, and that should be inspiration to the listeners that if you're not necessarily walking in your purpose yet, doing something that you're really passionate about. Hey, that's what you have to look forward to. You'll be able to breathe. Yeah.
Taking that breath, absolutely.
First time taking that breath. Yeah,
Absolutely.
certainly love it. Well, Dr. Eve, you've given us so much great just advice and inspiration. As we get ready to wrap up this interview, what parting words of advice would you leave the listeners with?
Be who you need it in any given circumstance, and stay patient with people, because just as you get frustrated with others, people get frustrated with you. So you want to do the reciprocity kind of thing.
Right.
And never stop trying. When you stop trying, you also quit on yourself or whatever it is that you're after. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, as my mom and my grandma used to say. So, find how you're going to get what you want out of this life, but don't stop trying if you truly believe in something, because not trying is giving up on yourself. And that's giving yourself permission to let go of what's important to you. And then you'll never know what it's like to breathe.
Wow. That's deep. I see why you get paid to speak. Professional.
I don't have no notes. Look at how I don't notes. I'm just speaking from my heart.
Yeah.
It's my heart.
That's great. Now, Dr. Eve, I know you mentioned your website. Is there any other ways that listeners can get in contact with you?
Of course. So people, if you'd like to connect, I am on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Those are my two social media platforms. And it's just at EVEHUDSONPHD that you can find me on both. So I love to connect and, share and, just get to know you.
Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate you stopping by, Dr. Eve, and bestowing that wisdom on us. It definitely is. I love it. Thank you very much.
You're so very welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure, and wishing you nothing but the best of luck in everything that you do ahead. I know that you're going to be great. I've really enjoyed you, and shout out to your listeners for being in this space and for taking this wisdom, because it's a lot of hard work that you're doing to even make it happen. So thank you for what you do.
Well, I hope you capture all of that incredible knowledge and wisdom that Dr. Eve graced us with. I was truly blown away. She is very intelligent, powerful, impactful, inspiring woman. So I loved every minute of that interview. Be sure to reach out to Dr. Eve. Check out her podcast, The First Gen Lounge. It's a really dope show. I'm sure that you will enjoy it. Also, don't forget to support your boy and pick up Poverty Powerball. It's available on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. It truly can help you overcome any adversity that you're facing. And since I'm feeling extra generous today, I actually have some free codes to download my audio book on Audible. So if you email me at Derrich, DERRICH at mentorselect.com and let me know that you want the book, I'll send you a free code to download it. See, that's the extra bonus for you listening to the very end of this podcast. Well, I'll be back next week with another guest mentor, so be sure to tune in.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Mentor Select podcast, helping you identify and follow your passions. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit mentorselect.com and Mentor Select on social media. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review. We'll catch you next time.